to me, fair friend, you never can be old, wrote William Shakespeare in one of his sonnets. Perhaps that was on the minds of his friends when they decided 400 years ago to preserve his works so that they should achieve immortality. The first folio, published in 1623, 7 years after Shakespeare's death, contained 36 of his plays. Had they not been included, 18 of those works might have been lost forever, including Macbeth, The Tempest and Julius Caesar. To celebrate the 400th anniversary of the first folio and to explain its significance, Shakespearean actor Ben Crystal joins me. Ben, lovely to see you. Welcome to GB News. So tell us more about the significance of the first folio, please.
Well, I think myself and a lot of people might imagine that for Shakespeare's time in his writing process, you know, he's sitting there up in his garret, he has a writing quill, he's by candlelight, he's writing these amazing plays, he passes them on to his actors, and these original manuscripts survived beyond his death, and then they published them. But that's really quite far from the truth of the matter, because soon after he died, his actors realized that they'd lost half of his plays. The manuscripts were long gone. And in fact, because of the way that they rehearsed the plays, much like a modern orchestra, you know, if you're playing the double bass, you don't have the violinist's parts. If you're playing Romeo, you don't have Juliet's part. So none of the actors had copies of the full plays, and they would have had to reconstruct them like a jigsaw puzzle when they wanted to put the book together. So the fact that this collection of Shakespeare's plays exists at all is a bit of a miracle.
Yes, and do we know the process by which the first folio was put together? Did it mean they had to rush around collecting up these scraps of paper, these individual scripts? Is that how it happened? Or was there some consolidated version of plays that they went back to?
They had 18, so copyright worked a bit differently back then. Shakespeare would have sold his plays to his actors. Then the acting company, when they were running low on money, could have sold the plays on to a publisher. So one of the jobs that Condell and Hemming, the editors of the first folio, two of Shakespeare's actors that had worked with him for 20 years, they had to do was go around to the publishers and argue back for the copyright that they'd sold. 18 of Shakespeare's plays had been published during Shakespeare's lifetime, but they weren't the sort of authorized versions. These were versions that the publishers had put out, and some of those editions were editions of the plays that had been stolen by other actors that had listened to them once they'd heard them, once they'd gone to see them, and had copied them out. And then the other 18, had to be found from all the actors that had, hopefully, that still their acting parts, their cue scripts, still tucked away at home.
Extraordinary. Ben, do you yourself make use of the first folio?
Oh, absolutely. And I should say, first of all, you know, a lot of this name's being touted around an awful lot, and very few people know what it actually means. The folio means this. If you take a piece of paper and you fold it in half, you have 4 sides to print on. That's folio. It's the Elizabethan hardback, essentially. And if you fold it again, well, that's twice as many sides to print on for the same price, and that's quarto, or paperback, essentially. And this book, this collection of Shakespeare's plays, was one of the very first, not quite the first, but one of the very first playwrights' works to be published in such a glorious and glamorous edition. And, you know, we have actors that work with actors that work with actors and go all the way back to 1660. And then there's this gap of knowledge because of the Puritan change and everything else. And so getting back to the working process of Shakespeare and his actors, well, that's something I do an awful lot in my work at the Shakespeare's Globe and the Shakespeare North Playhouse, where I'm an associate artist. We explore raising Shakespeare in the same time frame as Shakespeare's actors, which was about 2 or 3 days. And in these original practice buildings where they built the theatres as close as they can imagine it was like 400 years ago, we learn a lot about how to perform these plays, and sometimes we try with original practice costume or music or fighting. But in terms of the text, well, this book, this first folio, is, because it's edited by 2 of his actors, it's the closest we can get to Shakespeare and his process. So it's incredibly valuable to actors and to practitioners. And that being said, as authoritative as it might seem, it's worth remembering, first of all, that part of the reason why these plays weren't published in Shakespeare's time is that 80% of his audience couldn't read. And then the compositors, the typesetters, the people that put this book together, we know that there were 5 of them. We know that one of them was illiterate. And we also know that they would have had to typeset the plays upside down and back to front. So if you wanted to do to be or not to be, you'd start when you'd get a capital T from the top shelf, and then you get a lowercase o from the bottom shelf, and that's where uppercase and lowercase comes from in our modern typesetting. And you'd put the T in the bottom right, and then the O upside down, of course, and then the O, and then find a comma or what have you. And then you have these 5 men, one of whom was illiterate, who had to hydrate with beer, not water. So these guys were probably drunk. One of them was illiterate, and they were putting together these incredible works. So it is as close as we can possibly get to Shakespeare, but there's still some distance between us and him. But it's still one of the most valuable tools that we have in raising Shakespeare today.
Ben, amazing. You've explained really the miracle, I would say the miracle, of having the first folios with us today. Thank you very much, Ben Crystal.